All right. Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the Think Sacred podcast. I am Zach. I'm here with my father, Phil. And if you guys are new to the podcast, what we do is we basically talk about kind of general, larger theological, philosophical questions, but specifically with one of us taking up a more theological viewpoint, and another one taking a more philosophical viewpoint. Today we're going to talk about. I think we're going to talk about like the system and the way that what do you call it, like Social Security, disability, those kind of things. How they're set up and like how we utilize them and when we should use them, when we shouldn't utilize them, things like that. So I hope that kind of makes sense.
Well, I think so you actually about 15 minutes ago, you gave me a little indication of what we're going to talk about today, right? And which is about the most you ever give me, usually, I would say. So, and again, it's part of the podcast is where we don't really prepare. But what we were talking about last week that had to do with resilience, and I think that you were implying that this actually... like when we're talking about resilience, how do we, when we're talking about being resilient, how do we look at those things that are given to us, or how much, or potentially look to those things that are given to us and see if we can actually extract those, or basically maybe handouts from places, I think is what you were implying. Like, so this goes right into it. Right?
Yeah, it is tied in. Before we do that, though, real quick, we do have one comment, and it was actually on our short where we were talking about music and how like 70s and 80s rock bands, are all on drugs. They're all on drugs. So someone actually commented on that short and said, I take metoprolol beta blocker for my heart. It's like a muse. I have completed many songs. I think he means completed. I've completed many songs I could just never find the inspiration to complete for years. Now it's just come out of me like fluid, and bridges needed a bridge between second and third verse. Now I think of bridges like crazy. I wasn't expecting this when it was first subscribed to me. It just started happening. Then I read that this was so common that musicians without heart disease take beta blockers just for that effect. Plus, my heart rate is slowed down from 100 beats per minute to about 75 beats per minute. Good, but I also smell still cigarettes pretty much all the time. It's an odd smell. BP meds are just weird. Yeah, isn't that interesting?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if there's much to comment on there. It's interesting because he, this is a comment where it sounds like he's just saying, "Hey, I kind of understand what you're talking about."
Yeah.
When it comes to stuff like this. But I'm taking what we were talking about in the 70s. Were illegal, illicit drugs where you're taking them for, who knows, escapism, or maybe they thought they could do better music with those things. And he's saying, I'm taking it for a medical purpose, I think is what he's saying. Yeah. Yet it's actually giving me clarity when it comes to my music. And I'm like, does that say that you should be taking it? I'm not going to, I definitely,
Well, it sounds
I'm definitely
like
not going to go there.
It sounds like it's subscribed for his heart.
It's prescribed.
Prescribed for. Prescribed for his heart.
Go ahead. I mean, it's an interesting comment, though. It really is.
The thing is, when I'm playing, there's sometimes when I'll be playing and I'll have a few drinks. You know what I mean? Not to the point where I'm like drunk or anything, but like that. But just to where I'm feeling a little buzz, right? And I'll play like that, and it does really help. It helps playing guitar quite a bit. It's just kind of like what it does is it kind of like just loosens your ambitions, I guess, for like what you're doing. So you're not like concentrating so hard on like where your fingers are going. Instead, you're just like, it goes back into what I was telling you before, and you can do it even without drugs, where you get into this state where you're just kind of, you're just really loose and you're just really concentrating on just hearing instead of playing, you know what I mean? But basically, yeah, a little bit of alcohol helps with that too.
So what's the word inhibitions mean? I mean, we talk about it.
Yeah, where you're trying to do something. So, well, specifically on the guitar, when you're playing music, you're trying to do something, and you're trying to use your brain to figure out how to do it. But that's not the way like good guitar works, or like the people that we talked about, you know what I mean, where they just let it flow out of them. If you're sitting there, if you're trying to do your own thing, the guitar doesn't like it, you know what I mean?
Okay.
The guitar wants you to let go and then just
let go of your inhibitions. People use that term all the time. And then, you know, again, I'm never saying take drugs, and I'm never saying, you know, drink alcohol to the point of getting drunk. We know that from the previous podcast, how I feel about stuff like that.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's just,
absolutely.
It's just interesting. It's just interesting that we sometimes, you know, we have these phrases, right? We say, let go, let God. You know, there is a phrase that says, let go, just let God. In other words, you know, get rid of your worry, right? And then if you get rid of your worry, then you'll let God do. But in that theological aspect, you know, sometimes it's allow God, and then you'll get rid of your worry. You know, so I would say in that, the reverse is true, right? It's you don't let go, and then all of a sudden God takes over. You say, God help me, and then allow him to do his thing, and then it gets rid of your gets rid of your anxiousness. But in this is probably a little bit different context. It's like sometimes you get rid of your inhibition in a certain way, and then it frees you up to do things that may seem beneficial. It's just weird. It's a weird concept. Weird. Maybe that's why I'm so uptight all the time, you know?
That's why we had basically 2 whole episodes on this. I mean, we had one episode that we titled like art and something, and the next one was something about mysticism, because that's what you worry about with it, is you're not really for sure what it is. And we had brought up Bible verses that specifically say, you know, that we should maintain what is it? Consciousness, basically, our awareness, or your mind. It's
self-control. Self-control is one of the fruits of the spirits, I think, is what you're talking about.
Yeah. So it's a hard thing to grapple with. Oh, I don't think we ever came up with a full solid answer at the end of the other 2 episodes either. You know what I mean?
Oh, I mean, I don't mean to be ambiguous when it comes to, you know, what do I settle on? You know, do I settle on drinking? Yes. Do I settle on getting drunk? No. You know what I mean? So there are lines. You know what I mean? Yeah. It's just a matter of when. So I don't think I'm not drawing lines per se, but some things are kind of, even scripturally, I'm not saying they're ambiguous per se, but I'm saying that sometimes God says you don't do this and you do this, right? Yeah. But other times it may seem more ambiguous because of how it comes forth, and then you have to determine, because of the way that the Bible's written, God gives us a brain to look at that and go, oh, this doesn't, it means that in this circumstance, it doesn't tell you about that exact circumstance. Yeah. But it kind of gives you guidelines for how to approach things and approach life. Like, so where the Bible says it's all things, like the Bible is all things for, it's all things for life and godliness. Then, you know, within that is things that are very explicit and things that are more implicit, right? Yeah. So I guess I'm trying to defend myself. I'm not saying. Go ahead. Yeah.
Well, that's the whole point of doing philosophy and theology, is you are trying to figure out, you know, what is permitted, what's not permitted, what should I be doing, what should I not be doing, you know what I mean? And you the way you have to do that is you have to like solidify in your mind like where these lines are. So that way, you know, if you start looking around at your world and you realize you're cross a line, then you know you have to go back, and you have to, you know, it's like when Jonah comes to the city of Nineveh, you know what I mean? And he tells them, hey, you guys need to repent, you know what I mean? And then they decide to repent, and guess what? Then they're saved, you know what I mean? Yeah. And so, that's God, Jonah is quickly becoming my absolute favorite Bible story. Like, I use it. I was hanging out with some friends last Thursday. Was it last Thursday?
And it's not. Well, how many chapters is that?
Oh,
like
it's
or something
short.
like that.
It's so short. It's like a few pages in your Bible. Yeah, I was hanging out with some friends on Thursday, and it ended up coming up, like, we ended up talking about Jonah. Like, it is crazy. It's so deep for such a short story in the Bible. It's way deeper, you know what I mean, than most people, I think, realize. You know what I mean? I think there are a lot of Bible stories like that.
I think, well, back to my point, and again, I'm not trying to defend myself per se and say, well, I didn't answer it. I don't think I answered it and said you can and can't do those things. I was trying to just say, okay, here's the guidelines that I would say biblically we should follow, right?
Yeah.
That's what I'm saying. So I think I answered it in that respect.
Yeah.
And then you talk about Jonah and how 4 chapters, how can 4 chapters, only a few pages in the Bible, just contain so much depth when you read it and you're like, oh wow, like it is just such a it is such a good story. So it good, really is. So like deep. You and I had other discussions on this podcast where we just cracked up about it because it's just the attitude. When we think of Jonah in the little Bible stories, the kiddie ones where kids are going to
really simple.
They're going to Christian daycare or what do they call this Bible? What do they call it? Where basically the parents go to church and the kids go to. Yeah, I can't even think of the name of it because it's been so long since my kid's been in those things. But basically, I can imagine some of the stories we tell them where you just see, God told Jonah to do this. He actually decided not to. Then he finally relented because God basically, threw him in a position where he did. And then he went there and they repented. But we forget to tell them the piece of the story where Jonah was
pissed.
Ticked off.
He wanted everybody to die.
He's like, repent, or else God's going to kill you. It was the shortest sermon probably ever written in the Bible, and probably the shortest sermon anywhere, right?
Yeah.
And then it was all about, they're not going to repent, and God's going to kill them. Yay, that's what I'm hoping for.
And I'm going to go watch it. I'm going to go up on the hill, and I'm going to watch them die.
Well, he didn't say that, but that's for you.
I know,
It's funny because we look at that and we just go, wow, that's not the way that it's portrayed in these kiddie land, environments, right? It's not, but anyway, that's a side really note. It's just such a good story,
Well, that's what we had talked about. I think like really, really early on with one of the early episodes, somebody had commented on, like these are basic stories that we're talking about, but the basic core stories, I think there's a reason those stories are taught to the kids in the Bible studies, in the youth groups. Because if you understand them, how much depth they hold as you grow up, you'll learn to get more out of them. You know what I mean? I mean, they are the bedrock. You know what I mean? Daniel in the Lion's Den. That's like base, biblical. It's just the story. I mean, it's literally like the story of Jesus. You know what I mean? He's in there in the lion's den for 3 days. You know what I mean? Jesus died for 3 days. He's we talked about shadow. He's the shadow of Jesus.
Yeah, exactly. And it's a really really great way to read the Bible. Especially and I say Old Testament, New Testament. I use those terms a lot. The Bible is the Bible, right? Yeah. The only reason I say sometimes Old Testament is it's just to clarify to other people out there to say, hey, if you don't know the Bible, Old Testament just means it's pre-Christ. Yeah. That's all I'm saying. So if we look at the Old Testament, the types and shadows, how to read Christ into it, the fact that he said it was written about him at least twice. And if we understand the types and shadows that it has to do with God, his plan for redemption and salvation, then it becomes then you understand it in a more nuanced and more in-depth way. You start to understand it better that way. So types and shadows, like you said, are really key to understanding those stories, right? Mm-hmm. It's not about how I'm, like I said it before, but and it's one of those things that drive me batty, but it's not about those. It's who is our Goliath, and are we going to go out there and slay that Goliath? No, it's about God's. It's about God taking down the giant, and it's about God coming across and taking out sin for us to basically be able to be reconciled to God is more of the bigger story, right? But it wasn't about David. It was about how God did it, because David said that.
Yeah.
before he killed the giant.
Didn't David pick up
5
didn't he
stones.
pick up he picked oh, how many stones did he pick up?
5, I believe.
5, okay.
And I don't know why, right? Like,
but because he only kills him with the first one, right?
yeah.
So,
now,
yeah, that's got to be symbology. There's got to be something there.
you
know what I mean? Anyways, we should probably transition to our
what
actual
were we talking
topic.
about?
Yeah,
what's the topic
it's
for
great.
today?
That's a good sign that we're in a good mood today. if we're going on giant tangents.
I got a jug of coffee here.
But no, well, I mean, to transition into this idea of like how the system works, because obviously, all right, I'm being very careful right here because I don't want to make the communist argument, right? I don't think that like wealth should be evenly distributed amongst everybody. Just like take from the rich and just spread it out equally amongst the poor. I don't think that's right, and I don't think a communist system works. So I'm not trying to make that argument. But what I am kind of trying to get to here, and this is kind of why I'm like how do I say this? You know what I mean? Is like we do have a huge overabundance of supplies and wealth in this country, in the United States specifically. Like this might be a different conversation. Obviously, we lived in like Africa or something like that, or Asia or something. But in America, I mean, the wealth is more than most people think. Get what I'm saying? Like we have a even the poorest among us has way more than most people throughout all of human history have had, right? Like if you live in the United States today, you are in the top 1% of humans that have ever lived by far. You know what I mean? You ask a king from medieval times, would he rather, be a king back then or be a poor person nowadays? He'd probably rather be a poor person nowadays. You know what I mean? Yeah. So what am I trying to say here?
Can I try to take it maybe?
Yeah.
And I'm just thinking out loud here. So,
go
ahead.
Real quick. Hold on. The transition was that we get these ideas in our head that kind of like society has told us about working hard, burying the pain sometimes. We hear these things and I kind of wonder where they come from. Like I said, we hear the Bible stories, the kids' Bible stories, and we know where they come from. But sometimes we have these ideas, from just society, and I grew up kind of believing them, and over time I've kind of rethought some of them, you know what I mean? And so this would be an example of one. But go ahead.
Yeah, I'm having a hard time verbalizing exactly what you're getting at, but I think I totally get what you're getting at. I really do. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
What I'm going to do is hopefully I'm going to approach it from more of a biblical, vantage point, because I think that, when we're talking about what is offered here in the U.S., and then when we talk about biblical principles, when you think about them, and if I say, hey, this is a biblical principle, but if I step back and it only relates to me in this country, then it's probably not a biblical principle, because biblical principles should transcend any government and any society.
Yes.
So do understand that. So if I step on my tongue here and I say something that doesn't seem right, then question it and put a comment in there and maybe give your point of view as to it. But what I would say is that there are things within our government when it comes to safety nets and different things like that. We talked about that just a tiny bit last time, where we were talking about how bigger families would have made our safety net better for me, and then for you, you're going to have hardly any safety net. Where if they're going to pay for it, I would hate to say it, if our government's going to pay for the safety net, I think so, if I was to guess, Social Security will continue, but the way they're going to pay for it is through inflation, and then you're going to be paying through the nose, right?
Yeah.
Even more. So just because that's the only way to pay for it and keep the people satisfied, because they're not going to want that to go away. They'd rather have inflation, which they can't quite see, but they understand, but they don't really relate the two, right?
Yeah.
All that to say is that outside of the U.S., what are the principles? Again, You know, I'm shooting from the hip here because again, we didn't prepare, but I do think that there's, you know, when we talk about a balance, right? I'm going to say a lot of things here, but when we talk about, there's always a balance. What does that even mean, right? When someone says there's always a balance, then I think we envision the middle of the scale, right? A scale of balance, right? And we envision the middle of the scale. And that basically, if we go to the middle of the scale, it'll be in balance. Or if we actually have weights and measures on both sides that are equal, it'll keep the thing in balance, right? That's at least how I envision the balance, right? But my center of the scale is going to be different than someone else's center of the scale. All the more reason, for me at least, I just have to say, what does the Bible say? And I would say, what is the balance biblically? I would say that I would start here. So there's one verse out there that specifically says, if a man doesn't work, he shouldn't eat, right? There's that. But then,
man, that's harsh.
Now, well, yeah, but again, there's a balance. I would say there's a balance because there's other, when it talks about a man, again, in this context, it's mankind, right? When a person, just think of, if a person doesn't work, he shouldn't eat. But then there's another verse in James where it talks about Christianity. What is true Christianity? True Christianity is taking care of the orphans and the widows. That's what it says. It says, so if we think of what is true Christianity, we're taking care of the orphans and we're taking care of the widows. Now, the implication, and then also there's another verse out there. There's probably, I know there's others that I'll probably come to, or think about it as we're going through this. There's another one that says we ought to bear one another's burdens. Now, the way that was explained to me biblically, like in the language of the time, the Greek language is what it was written in. It's not saying that you should basically usurp and take every bit of that person's burdens that they ought to be taken on top of yourself. That basically, and I remember a picture in one of these books I was reading where it shows a person in a swamp and a person on the edge of the swamp grabbing their hand to help them out of the swamp versus the other one that's getting in the swamp with them. Right?
Yeah.
So, bearing, a person ought to eat, but we ought to be sharing one another's burdens. If those who basically are wealthy, it talks about the wealthy in the Bible as in the New Testament, because this is where, what is New Testament giving, right? The wealthy ought to share their wealth with those who are not as fortunate, right?
Yeah.
So all this to say is that there is a biblical balance, I would say. Now, maybe we can, I don't know. I mean, I don't know how well I could work through all the nuances of this, but I would say at a high surface level, it's if he doesn't eat, he shouldn't, or if he doesn't work, he shouldn't eat, right? He or she. But again, it talks about the wealthy give to those who are in need, right? So how do you know that you're given to someone that is in need and not in want, right? I guess I would just, how do you do that? You don't know that all the time as a person, right? There might be a person on the corner that is asking for money, and I'm just saying that I've seen this personally where I saw a guy, it was not too long ago, where basically, you drive up to him, and obviously they always do it at where you have to stop, right? You know what I mean? At lights or whatever, right? Lights or strategic stop signs, right?
Yeah.
Which is fine, But I remember he didn't have an arm and he was an elderly man. I'm thinking to myself, I can't interview him and to see if he's making a ton of money doing something else and he just wants more money. All I can do is take a look at the situation and say, okay, I'm stopped. I can actually have my wallet out and I can give him money. And there's another guy that does it. You may have seen him in this local store out here where he sits in the chair. And if you look at his legs, he doesn't look too old, but his legs are, it's those conditions where I would say I'm not a doctor, but either his kidney, his heart is given out. Like he does not look healthy, right?
I know exactly who you're talking about, actually.
Yeah.
Yes, I have seen him.
Yeah. And it's like, okay, versus someone who looks more healthy standing at the corner. I'm not saying that I know the condition and the financial state of these guys.
Well, see, that's
I'm saying
the weird
sometimes
thing.
we just have to make. Sometimes we have a split second to make a decision, and we make a decision. Other times we might know the person a little bit better, and we have more information where we can even make a more healthy decision. And what I'm talking about is we who have money given to those who are in need.
You're talking about,
You know? So there's principles there. How do we exercise those principles is a different thing, but they're there.
Yeah,
you know?
See, that's the thing too. It's like, it's not like the government's like Social Security program it's pretty difficult to get through. It takes like a year, sometimes even more.
Are you talking Social Security, or are you talking, because Social Security at the age of 62 or whatever?
I'm talking about like disability.
Okay,
I'm talking about disability.
Totally get that.
Yeah, I mean it's not as easy as some people think it is to get on. It's pretty difficult. And then you have things like the VA disability as well, which the VA disability is way easier to get on. But of course, obviously, you have to be a veteran and everything like that. See, it's weird. Like back in the Roman days, basically, if you joined the army, when you got back from the army, you were given like certain. What would you call it? Like you were just given certain benefits in society in general. You know what I mean? You were given land, you were given, a good payment that would like hold out basically for, quite a while after you get out and everything like that. And it's not like that. It's not really like that today. I mean, the army people don't get paid a whole lot. I mean, depending on your job, I guess you get paid more, but anyways, the point is, right, is there's different things to like think about when it comes to this. It's like, and then you have like, I get working hard and pushing yourself to the limits, like in your day-to-day work and everything like that, and trying to do the best job you can possibly do. Like when I do a job, like I might be hurting really bad and I might be complaining about it, but I'm still trying to do the job to the best of my abilities, right? Without, I'm trying not to flub it ever, because then at that point in time, I feel like I'm cheating myself or something like that. You know what I mean? But if you are pushing yourself, but then you get to a point though where some people are pushing themselves to the point where they're hurting themselves, and like at that point in time, when you say something like, we say, or that verse that you brought up, if man doesn't work, he shouldn't eat. Well, you know what I mean? Like I said, if a man is to the point where he's pushing himself, working to the point that he is actively making his body worse, now he's damaging himself. Now you're getting into another thing, which in my mind would be not good. You know what I mean?
I agree. I agree. I think if we're looking at that, and this is where, again, this is where
it's a rough one. Huh?
You're right, because I think from a part of giving and then a part of taking on both sides, it's, again, there is a balance, right? So how do I look at, so for me, right, I haven't started taking Social Security, but I'm trying to forego it as long as I can, and then if I take it, maybe there's people in society who think that is evil if I start taking Social Security, right? I don't know. Now, you know what I mean? Because now I'm taken, you know what I mean, from society. But then again, to your point, I think that verse is let me just put it this way. There are places in the Bible where it talks about just slothfulness and laziness, right?
Yeah.
And it talks about that. And then it also says it is good to work with your hands, right? It talks about that in, I think it's Ecclesiastes actually, is one of the places where it talks about that, where there is a satisfaction when people do that. But what does that mean? Like, does that mean that I'm going to go dig a hole with the most, archaic tools possible. You know what I mean?
Yeah, pickaxe and a shovel.
Or yeah, exactly. Or yeah, when the tractor's right there, and I'm like, no, I'm good. No, or does it mean that I'm out there thinking through things and doing those type of handyman work things, or does it mean that that I'm, mom, for example, well, she does that, she does yard work, but also, just the other day, she was finishing up some teddy bears for someone, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And she's sitting at a chair at her sewing and cutting things out. And that's handy, man. That's doing stuff with your hands too. You know what I mean? It's not to say that we're supposed to be doing that all the time. I don't think that's it at all. I think that, I guess if I was to say, and again, that's where I'd probably need to read this in context. Is it talking about where we have the ability to take care of, like take care of our family, like without really putting ourselves in a dangerous situation? We easily do. And yet we are going to sit by and do nothing while our family is hungry and they don't have clothes on their back.
Yeah, that's a big difference too.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So I think when it says, sometimes we look at that one verse and we say that is a harsh verse. It probably is harsh. I think it needs to be harsh, but I think in taken in its full context with the other verses that I mentioned, you know what I mean, about helping those or sharing one another's burdens and for for those who have money, basically they are to look at it as an opportunity to give, right? But then that means, that necessarily means, with all the other verses around it, that we when people give, right?
Yeah.
That on the flip side, on the one side is if we receive, we should do it. We receive cheerfully, right? Yeah. We receive thankfully, but even when we give, we use some discernment. It's not like we can go do a deep dive study. That's not what I'm saying. But we should use some common sense to say, if I have X amount of money, I'm going to make sure that I give it to, people who are in,
a few years ago,
are in need, right?
A few years ago, you had talked about, letting someone like borrow a tool or paying for someone's like a trip specifically. Mm-hmm. And then you were saying, they said they'd pay you back, but you didn't expect anything back. Right? Mm-hmm. You remember something like that?
Yeah. So that is, no, I don't remember exactly what I said, but that there is a philosophy that I heard this for a long time ago, and I latched onto it, and I think is a really good philosophy. Now this is more of given to borrow, right? Which I think when you do that and you when you give to borrow, right? You got to be really careful when you're giving to family and friends that you aren't giving money that you don't have, because then the expectation of getting it back is going to be more high and more angst, and it's going to cause division, rather than just saying, hey, I'm able to give here. And if I want to do it as a giving, then I'm going to say it's giving. If I want to do it as a loan, I'm going to say it's a loan, but I'm okay. I'm going to be okay that if that is not repaid. That's really, I think, what I was talking about, because if you, and someone told me that a long time ago, and he was a Christian, and I thought that is really good advice, because if I give to someone, if I loan someone money, right? Yeah. And usually when it's a person loaning someone else money, it's either family or friends. It's not going to be some just juggle off the street. It's, you're going to consider them someone right?
Yeah.
You give. You only give as much as you're willing to lose. Yeah. That's what I'm saying. Yeah. Does that make sense?
No, it makes sense.
And comfortably, to where you're not going to lose that friendship over that giving because you should have never given it in the first place, right?
Yeah. Now, let's transition back over to this. You brought up a lot of good things, and there was definitely a few things in there that I was like, oh yeah, that's really good. But to transition back to like a government structure, right? Like the way that we see, I wonder how much of like our current system is set up to like keep us working all the time. You know what I mean? Have you ever heard that, right?
Yeah,
That
I
the
definitely have.
the
You know,
idea, that you work 9 to 5, 5 days a week is kind of strange. It's like,
I
why do
heard it
we
started with the Rockefellers, or the
exactly?
Carnegies, or something.
I was literally just thinking that. I was literally just thinking that, right? Because Rockefeller said, and I think I had mentioned that on the podcast, haven't I? I've mentioned it
I
already.
don't know. I don't know, but
Rockefeller said that he when he created this, well, when he started influencing the school system, is basically he's trying to make a bunch of factory workers. He's
yeah.
trying to make people that are just smart enough to run the machines that he wants them to run.
Now, again, this is where I don't say that that's not true, but as many things as I've seen on the internet, especially in the since AI more than anything,
God, yeah.
seen
It's
so many
gonna get
lies, so
worse.
many lies out there, and then people that have that seem like it's a really good quote that you might gravitate toward,
Yeah.
and you just like, and you come to find out that person never made that quote.
Here's a question.
Maybe he did, and maybe he did or didn't, but maybe society was originally set up to make workers and not entrepreneurs, or not free thinkers. I don't know.
Well, the more context I was going in,
but it's fun. I'm just laughing because I'm just laughing because as I'm like this semi-retired guy, I've been looking at these retirement videos and trying to understand strategy, and you come across stuff like that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
About working and not working, and whether and when to take retirement. What I found, I'm just going to say something real quick. What I have found out is that 67 age, I've come to the determination myself that age of full retirement is just an arbitrary number. It's so arbitrary because any way you calculate it, up to 70 or back down to 62, you're losing or gaining that 8% no matter where you slice and dice it. So why don't they say 70's full retirement? Why do they say 67? Why not say 65? And then you gain 8% or lose 8% either way you go. It's an arbitrary number. It's so arbitrary. I would say it's not. It's arbitrary. That's all.
Yeah, I'm sure it depends on every person.
That's Phil's philosophy. That's not in the Bible anywhere. I don't think.
Yeah. I mean, I'm sure it depends on every person. There's also this idea of living a good life versus living a long life. Have you ever heard that?
Oh yeah. Trust me, I've seen a lot of those lately too.
Yeah, it's a good question. There's some people that like have really brought that up. There's a few I think Jordan Peterson brought that up once, where there was a video a long time ago I watched of his where he was basically saying, I mean, I don't know, do you really want to live to be 100, or would you rather live an amazing life and only live to like be 35? Like, who knows?
Yeah.
Yeah, hard to say.
I sideswiped you. What was your point you were trying to bring up?
With the workers and everything like that.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, okay, in ancient times, how much work were we doing? Like, I know we talk about farmers working really hard and everything,
mm-hmm.
and working on their crops and everything and stuff like that. And then, but there's downtimes between working on your crops too. You know what I mean? Especially during like the winter and stuff like that, when you're stuck inside. And then you have the other thing of play. Like, play is like integrated into who we are, right, as humans. Mm-hmm. And it's like, you have to have time to play. I mean, even God, there's supposed to be a Sabbath day, right? There's supposed to be a day of rest. There's supposed to be a day where you're not supposed to be working. Specifically, you're not supposed to be working, at least, that day. Mm-hmm. So, God, I mean, it's hard. Like I said, I'm trying to find this balance. And like I said, I'm definitely not trying to make this utopian communist argument, because obviously I don't believe in anything like that, you know what I mean, anywhere near anything like that. Mm-hmm. But I really feel like there's no need, especially in our society nowadays, there's no need for everybody to be working 9 to 5 all the time, you know what I mean? And there's no reason for people to be pushing themselves to the point where they're injuring themselves. You know what I mean? If you're pushing yourself to the point where you are injuring yourself, that is too far. Or in my opinion. Now, once again, it's a very hard one. It's a very strange one. It's one I'm fighting with and wrestling with because, like I said, growing up, it's always been basically, hammered into us. You know what I mean? That you work hard and you get a good job and you work the job, and I don't know. You get what I'm saying? It's so hard. There's like, I don't know. That's how I'm feeling about it.
Well, no, I mean, it's again, how do you take it? Because there is a balance. There's a balance in life personally, and there is a balance scripturally. And how do we take the balance scripturally and say it's okay? So I will say in everything in life, right? Well, actually, let me back up a little bit. So me personally, right? I like working. I like doing things. I like working with my hands. But what I found out for the last 20 years and that's where I started a corporate job where I sat my butt at a desk, right? And the first year and a half or so, I gained about 60 pounds, and I basically have lost only inkling of it after that time. And I found out that sitting at a desk, I worked hard, didn't really work with my hands at all during that time, except, not for work itself, right? But I found out that is absolutely, I mean, I would push people away from that because it is absolutely unhealthy.
Yeah.
It is so unhealthy to sit your butt at a desk and has given me a bunch of issues. Weight and back are two of the main things it has given me, right?
And it's funny because your corporation, I mean, gave you everything. Like they gave you standing desks, raising, lower desks. They gave you nice chairs, right? Mm-hmm. It's not like they didn't do everything they could to make it as nice as possible, right?
Oh, absolutely. So it wasn't them, but it's a choice that you make. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah.
So
well, I mean, it's like, well, first of all, there is this is actually a pretty good topic because there is a huge, I think, bubble of office workers at the moment, or people that work on computers or at desks, you know what I mean, as opposed to working in the field, you know what I mean? But basically, the human body just wasn't designed to do that.
Yeah, and so how do you strive? How do you But there's people that need to be doing that, I guess, in today's world. You know what I mean? Doing the necessary things to make sure AI is happening. Make sure supply chain is going. I work in the supply chain. You know what I mean? Make sure e-commerce is going because everyone wants to buy things online. You know what I mean? And you have companies fighting for that space, you know what I mean? Yeah. Fighting for that dollar, right? And how do you you have to have people sitting their butts in the seat to be doing that. Now, again, I had the choice of sitting in a seat or at a standing desk, and I did both for a while, but why am I saying that? I brought it back a little bit to say, okay, that's where I was, right? And I would maybe discourage that if you're thinking about that. If you have time to think about other things, if that's the path you want to go, then obviously go for it. But
that's you just brought up something, hon. You just said something good.
Go ahead.
It's a completely different conversation when you need to do work, because when you need to do work, you will be motivated to do work. I've been there before myself. So that's not the conversation that we're having. When you need to get out there and make some money, get out there and make some money. You know what I mean? And you'll know when that is. So that's not what we're talking about. We're specifically talking about something on the other side of that. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I do. I do. So again, those in the past, those are the guidelines I would just give to say that the Bible does talk about work. It talks about, it does talk about, does it talk about relaxing, so to speak? I mean, it talks about resting. It absolutely does. It talks about the Sabbath day rest, that's another topic shadow, but I don't want to get into that right now, but talks about working, talks about it's a good thing to work with their hands and know how to do it. It talks about those people that can't do it, take care of them. It's good to have celebrations, That's a really good thing, So I think biblically God gives us those things. I would say that for me in life, one thing I probably didn't do a very good job of is celebrating or just enjoying life as much. You know what I mean? Where I think now I'm trying to, especially me and mom, but I don't think I like enjoyed life. I was as much as I could have, and I'm not saying throwing money at enjoying life. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm not saying money is. I'm not saying you throw money at it to enjoy it. I'm saying that I could have enjoyed it even in the situations that I was in, just, relaxed a little more,
Yeah.
if that makes any sense. So,
Yeah. Yeah, that's another completely different conversation. When you have a ton of money and you're rich and everything like that, there's a ton of people that have a ton of money and are rich, and they're either crazy or, they basically don't get any satisfaction in life. You hear it all the time.
Mm-hmm.
There's so many good rock songs. I go back to talking about music and everything. There's so many good rock songs or pop songs, or where they're basically the whole song is about them telling you, you don't want to do this. You do not want to be a rock star. You do not want to be like I Took a Pill in Ibiza by Mike Poser.
I was thinking you were talking Bad Company or the band before Bad Company.
Yeah, I mean the Mike Poser one is just one that's really really fitting, because he's talking about being a famous, wealthy, star, and how it is not fun. It is agonizing. It sucks. My friends die. I'm doing drugs for I don't know why, just to like try to make somebody think I'm cool. You know what I mean? And he's basically saying literally one of the signs is you don't want to be up on the stage singing. You know what I mean?
Even Turn the Page by Bob Seger. It's about the grill. Basically, that's a good song. He doesn't say it's a bad thing. Well, I mean. He talks about the flip side of it, the side that we don't want to hear about, I guess. You know what I mean? In that song, it's probably not as explicit as the one you're talking about. That's a song that talks about that,
Absolutely.
Hotel California, I think my understanding that has to do with the industry a little bit,
man.
and more
Hotel California
and more
is
about the financial,
ones.
Right?
It was remember I think I told you I took it's one of Mom's friends. I took Janice to a Eagles concert in California. This is way back when, this is decades ago now. Right? But we went to Arco Arena in California, and we saw the Eagles, and like afterwards, like the whole drive home, the group, all they were talking about is, what does Hotel California mean? Like it was pretty funny. It was pretty funny to hear everybody's.
You can check out any time you like, but you can never leave.
You can never leave. That's
you can
right.
never leave.
That's right.
Yeah,
that's a great. I love so many of those songs, man. All the heavy metal songs, they're so good, from the heavy metal album, from the movie. I love that stuff.
But Anyways. Here's I'm sorry.
It's funny how we get back on art every once in a while.
Well, no, but here's what I was gonna say, and it had to do with just life in general, right? And the balance that we try to strike biblically in general. We're going through life, and we do need to check ourselves. And I'm not saying we be anxious about checking ourselves and go, and man, am I exactly where I need to be when it comes to work versus play versus not working because I don't need the money and I really don't want to work. You know what I mean? Like, what is the balance all the time?
Oh, yeah.
I would say it's good to check this is just a general statement. And then, but yeah, check yourself, but let's not be anxious about those things. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well,
does that make sense?
So me specifically, and this is where I'll get a little more personal myself. I hate having to work. Right. I hate it when I have to have a job, and I hate it when especially when I'm working a job for like a corporation there, and the system is set up in this way where it's like it doesn't benefit the people with the best ideas or the people that are on the floor. It benefits the people that are above, that make these strange decisions that you're just like, well, why did you do that? Anyways, but the point is me personally, deep down, I hate working. You know what I mean? Now, when I work, obviously, and I've already said this, when I work, I'm going to do my absolute best job I can possibly do. You know what I mean? Because that's something inside of me. You know what I mean? But in general, I don't like the idea of working at all. And I would much rather, obviously, I guess this is like way too obvious, but I'd rather us just all find a way that we can all just be playing all the time. You know what I mean?
What do you consider work?
Oh man, ooh, oh God, that's a great question. That's right, because basically like I'm thinking of some of these like where I worked for a bigger corporation, and it's like, are you really doing work, or are you just sitting around, or are you doing something very mundane that probably doesn't need to be done? I don't know. Yeah, now you got that's a good question. That's a good question. What is work? You know what
I
I
was
mean?
just watching this, and it really sounds, it may sound strange, but these are sometimes the things I gravitate toward on YouTube, right? I was watching this guy. He has a channel called Vancouver Carpenter, right? And you don't see him ever doing carpentry work on that channel. Apparently, he is a good carpenter, but basically, he gravitated toward drywall, and that's all you see him doing, right? Mm. And he was showing, because he was doing so much drywall in this house, that his arms and shoulders were hurting so bad that he was showing a different technique that a novice like you and I could do, where he was rolling it, taking a paint roller and rolling the mud onto the ceiling, and then taking, basically it was an 8-foot. So you could tell it was like a low 8-foot ceiling, mm-hmm. and then taking a finishing knife and then knocking it down, right? Or not knocking it down. That's a whole different concept. But basically creating a finish on the wall, right? Why am I telling you this? It's because for him, so no, that's his livelihood, right? Yeah. That is his livelihood. And then he's made obviously some money on YouTube as well, filming his livelihood, right? But he was talking about the mundane, like he said, sometimes this is fulfilling for him. He didn't say it quite like that, but sometimes doing the mundane things is fulfilling for him, because his mind starts like he starts having clarity of thoughts in other ways, right? That was just his thing. So was that work for him? So I'm asking you, I guess, because that was work that for him, it was work that was paying his bills, but it was something we would go, man, doing that mudding and all that stuff is not for me. But for him, it was like, in the way that he was doing it was, I was interpreting it as therapeutic.
Yeah, wonder.
So back to the question is, what do you consider work? Because some people, sometimes, a musician what their work would be figuring out the sound, figuring out the structure of the song, figuring out the chord progression. I don't know, and we would say, well, that's not work. That's why I'm asking the question.
That's another thing too. Yeah, is so there are professional YouTubers that all they do is play video games, right? You wouldn't consider that work, right? But they make millions of dollars doing it. Yeah. You know what I mean? Yeah. So it's really I mean, all Asmongold does, right, is watch other YouTube videos, comment on them, and then also play video games and comment on his playing of the video game. And the dude is like, dude has so much money, it ain't even funny. But anyways, but the point is, yeah, you know what I mean, is so it is weird to think of, like, what is work, what is play.
So here's another thing to jog your, well, I mean, and maybe you don't want to go there, I don't know, but if you want to kind of explain, what do you think work is, what do you think play is, you know what I mean? And this is something that came up when Mom and I went to go visit a friend in Vegas. We went there for his son's wedding, right? It was funny because what we did there, part of what we did there is he had these brand new scooters, and they were like $2,000 scooters, and they were amazing. And we were riding around on these scooters, right? And while we're riding around out in 30 minutes north of downtown Vegas in his subdivision, he was just kind of mentioning to me about his son-in-law. I have no clue about his because he has 4 kids, 2 daughters, 2 sons. Well, his daughter is married to a professional golfer, right?
Oh, okay.
Well, you think of, he's a professional golfer, right? And you think, oh, he's a professional golfer. He must be making money. Well, this guy, Tom, actually mentioned to me, and I never even asked about this guy or anything. I just heard that she's married a professional golfer. That's all. That's the only context I knew. Well, he was mentioning to me he's getting into his, I guess he's 30 or in his early 30s, and he's over there, meaning he's overseas on an overseas tour.
Oh, okay.
Trying to make money, and she's working trying to keep his golf afloat because he's really not making money. He's good enough to be on tour, not the PGA tour, but a different tour, right? But not good enough to pay
bring in like $1 million.
Well, not even $1 million. Yeah, not even to pay the household bills,
okay.
Right? This may be too personal. I'm sorry if I mention any names. I probably already did. Oops. But the question, and he asked me, should he just is it time for him now at that age to scrap? Because he asked me because he knew how good I used to be at golf, right?
Yeah, yeah.
But I never rose to that level. You know what I mean? But should he just kind of scrap it and get a real job is kind of the question, and then basically help with the household bills, right?
Mm.
And I'm thinking to myself, that's a really oddball, out of the blue question to ask me while we're kind of going on our scooters, But it really, I think it's a really good setup for maybe how you would look at it. I don't know, but how would you look at that and say, wait, she's working, they're married, right? She's working, he's working, but his work isn't paying the bills. Her work is paying his bills and the household bills. What do you how do you look at that?
Yeah, it goes back to that point where I was talking about. So realistically, they do have enough to pay the bills, because when you get to that point where, okay, now I really need to pay the bills, you will change what you're doing. You know what I mean? You'll be forced to change, or whatever else, you crash and burn. You know what I mean? Then once you crash and burn, then you'll be at that point then where you will be like, okay, well now I've got to do something else. So
yeah, here's what I would agree. I think that's absolutely spot on advice. One thing I would caution, if I was to actually answer him better, because I think I was like, well, I don't know, I may have actually said something pretty vague. I don't know, because I didn't know how to answer it, and I have a hard time answering without having more information.
Yeah.
And what I probably should have asked.
It's almost a very personal. It really is a personal decision.
I do think it's a very personal decision, and I think that's probably the way I took it. But I do think that the guidance I probably, if I was asked again, probably would have given it is to say, are they going in debt because of the position they're in? That's a whole different level, because we know that biblically, the lender, the borrower is slave to the lender. That's in the Bible, right?
Yeah.
And that just means it's, when we understand what biblical slavery is, it means that you're going to have to work for that person rather than making money. You're going to have to work for that person to pay them off, because you owe them the debt, right? It's not, and it's not a good place to be, is basically what it's inferring, right? So are you going in debt because, and is it, are you going in debt, and is it growing into a place where you're going to have years, you're going to be in your early 30s, it's going to be until you're 40 something to pay it back? You're going to lose a decade of your life potentially.
Yeah.
So
Jesus
maybe
Christ.
that's the advice I would have given him, and just said, are they going into debt because of it? And they need to probably rethink their priorities because of that, right? And I'm not saying, I wouldn't say go get a corporate job or go get a job that pays, $100,000 a year. It may be that he again, instead of being a golf pro who's on the tour, he becomes a golf pro who's actually, given lessons because that's his forte. I don't know.
Oh, yeah.
But I'm not saying go do this, go quit and do this other thing, but that may have been the question, more I think about it, that I didn't think of asking.
Yeah.
Are they going into debt for doing it? And that's probably where you got to say, okay. And I think I did ask the question though, and I do think that this is right too. I don't know. I think I did ask a question, or say basically, how does the wife think about it?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because you have to consider that too. If she's thinking, I'm done, I can't handle where I feel like I'm the one killing myself back to
Yeah,
work,
yeah.
killing myself working to support this household.
People don't think about that other thing too, the mentality part of it.
Mhm.
Maybe the job is mundane and maybe it doesn't physically affect you, but maybe it's mentally affecting you too. And people might see, some people might scoff at that, you know what I mean? But realistically, like if you're to the point where you're driving yourself crazy, or it gets to the point where somebody's like thinking of committing suicide or something like that, you know what I mean? Then that's a, you know what I mean? That needs to be taken into consideration as well. You know,
I think
I mean, I took it to the
you're
extreme
right.
there. I went to the far extreme, but I'm just pointing out that there is definitely this thing that people should consider when they're saying that people need to work. You need to work, or whatever, or something like that. Maybe I mean, there might be some instances where people just they might look fine on the outside, but on the inside, they are not capable of working.
Do you think that someone who actually works a corporate job, mows their lawn on the weekend, or works on their car on the weekend, do you think that is work? Mowing the lawn, working on their car during the weekend. Do you think that's work?
Those things are work.
Do you think they're working
you do
that
for your
context,
house
though?
is also work. See, that's the thing too. Is anything that you can do that
working
improves
on
your
I'm sorry.
your stuff.
I'm sorry. Let me clarify. Working on a model car, not. I'm sorry. Not working on a 57 Chevy in your garage, and it has nothing to do with your car that you're working on.
See, that might
is
be
that
play.
work? Okay.
That's a good question. Yeah, that one might be play.
The reason I ask that is because sometimes it has to do with context. You know what I mean? When it comes to what's work and what's not work, right?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Am I mowing lawn because it needs to be done? Probably. That's probably not the good example. Or do I have a lawn care business and that's just what I do to make money for my family? I don't know.
See, remodeling a room or something like that, that's definitely work. You know what I mean? Like if you're in your house and you say, I want to remodel the bathroom and everything, that's work. You know what I mean? That has, a benefit that goes forward.
I guess the reason I'm bringing this up is because you're talking about your mental well-being. I know people. I'm sorry. How much? What time?
Yeah, we probably need to wrap it up here.
One thing I guess I was trying to, or the reason I was asking this question, I guess, is because there are people I know, and I specifically know the two that I'm thinking about, and there's several others, and where this person that I work with in the corporate world said, man, I like. On the weekend, and he didn't even have a big lawn, so it was a push mower and mowing and weed eating. That was his therapy.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking, okay,
I really enjoy mowing.
And so at the same time, this working with your hands, can you do both, where you're working or working with your hands, working and it's therapeutic, yes. And I know another person, actually, he's the pastor of my church, who actually mentioned this just recently, where he said that working on cars, and I know what he meant. He wasn't I don't think he was talking about working on his car. I don't know, but where that is therapeutic for him because he enjoys doing that, right? That can you do both, where you're working with your hands, and you're keeping your mind going, and it's therapeutic and it's biblical, right? Yeah. Like, can you check all those boxes? I guess you know what I mean.
Yeah.
Where I was working at the desk and I was okay, and then for the last year it was drudgery, and only when I quit working did I start looking back, and I just thought, oh wow, my mental state, like you mentioned, like for some reason, my mental well-being is a lot better now than it was in the last year when I was doing that.
Yeah.
Right. So how do you balance all of it together to say biblically we need to work? Those people that are lazy ought not be, that the church, the people of the church ought not be given to those people. Forget about what the government does. I think we ought to just forget about what the government does in this example.
See, that's kind of what I wanted to talk about.
No, but I don't mean forget about it. I don't mean forget about it per se, because I think there is like maybe how if we were to set up a government, how would it be, right? But I think when it comes to giving, it's always in the Bible. It's always the people of the church. You know what I mean? How do they look at giving or not giving, and are they you know, how are they doing it, and how do they do it so it's following a biblical example, right?
Yeah.
So I think that's okay to look at it that way. I'm not saying forget about the government. I'm not saying about that, because there's another thing to say. All of these handouts that we're getting, that's interesting, because we know that people that have been on welfare over years, they're mentally they're not as good off as people that work with their hands, though, too. So, you know what I mean? Like medically, those are the people that are more induced with drugs than the people that are working with their hands and have satisfaction out of that.
Yeah, but
so,
like, is there a causality, or is it, you know, I mean, you know, just
it could be a little bit of both.
What causes, like, does one cause the other, or does anyways, I think this is probably what we should talk about on the next episode then here. So we'll give heads up for what the next episode will be, but I guess we should probably talk about people have different, like, levels of ability, right?
Oh,
you know
yeah.
what I mean? Like, if somebody is you know, like, legitimately mentally less capable than another person, how much do we expect of them? How much do we expect of them? You know, should the government specifically be giving these people handouts and not giving these people handouts, things like that, you know what I mean? And I think that's what we need to talk about on the next one. What do you think?
I think that's totally fine.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
There we go. And now you know what it is, so now you can come prepared with some Bible verses.
Well, I don't know how the government needs to step in. That's going to be more difficult, but
yeah.
But how we should step in and look at that, we should be graceful as to how we approach it.
Yeah.
Knowing only what we know.
Yeah.
Knowing we're not infinite, and knowing that we ought to have giving hearts.
All right. Okay, thanks everybody. Appreciate you guys sticking around to the end if you're still here. Give us a like, subscribe, comment what you guys think. Obviously, we didn't, you know, there were some parts where we didn't come to a conclusion, and something I guess I'm still going to be wrestling with for quite a while. So, I mean, if you guys have some advice or something to say, love to hear from you. So, all right.
Yep. Thank you very much. No, I appreciate it. And hopefully we'll see some good comments, or just comments in general. We love the comments.
Yeah, we love comments.
Good or bad or indifferent. We like.
Well, I mean, shoot, the one that we had today, 15 minutes worth of talking about art.
That was
I love talking about music and art with you.
It was a very
get around to that again.
Pertinent comment.
Yeah,
it really was. It was really, really good for that that short.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you. That was a perfect comment, honestly.
Yeah, it was great.
It just, you know, I'm not, you know, agree or disagree. It was just really the right, you know, it was spot on and truthful. You know what I mean?